You think attraction is about chasing, proving, and performing. But what if the fastest way to make her feel drawn to you is by what you refuse to do? Listen carefully. Most men are trained to beg for attention in subtle ways, texting too fast, agreeing too easily, reshaping themselves just to be liked. It feels logical, it feels polite, it feels safe. But safety doesn't spark desire. Safety without depth becomes invisibility. A smart man understands something most men never learn. Attraction grows when a woman senses a man who is grounded in his own boundaries, when he doesn't collapse his identity just to be chosen, when he doesn't trade his values for validation, when he's emotionally present but not emotionally dependent. Refusal is not arrogance, it's not cruelty, it's self-respect in action. And self-respect is magnetic. The first thing a smart man refuses is over-explaining himself. When you constantly justify your decisions, your opinions, your boundaries, you subconsciously tell her that you need approval to exist. Women don't feel safe around men who are uncertain about their own choices. They feel drawn to men who stand calmly in their truth, even if others disagree. Imagine this. You choose not to go somewhere, not to reply immediately, not to agree with her perspective. A weak man rushes to explain himself, apologizing for his own existence. A smart man simply states his position with calm certainty. He doesn't argue. He doesn't beg. He doesn't seek permission to be himself. That quiet certainty is intoxicating. The second thing a smart man refuses is emotional overinvestment too early. Most men pour their heart out before trust is built. They reveal everything, promise everything, give everything. It feels romantic, but psychologically it removes tension and curiosity. Attraction thrives in space. It breathes in mystery. When you give everything instantly, there is nothing left to discover. This doesn't mean being cold or manipulative. It means pacing emotional intimacy. Let her learn you gradually. Let her wonder. Let her feel that you have a full life, not a life that starts and ends with her attention. The third thing a smart man refuses is disrespect disguised as testing. Sometimes she might tease, challenge, or push boundaries to see how grounded you are. A weak man tolerates disrespect because he fears losing her. A smart man calmly addresses it. He doesn't explode. He doesn't submit. He simply makes it clear what behavior he accepts and what he doesn't. This is powerful because boundaries create safety. They show emotional maturity. And emotional maturity is rare and extremely attractive. The fourth thing a smart man refuses is losing himself in the pursuit of her. He doesn't abandon his goals, his friends, his purpose just to stay available. He doesn't cancel his growth for temporary validation. He understands that a man without purpose becomes predictable, needy, and forgettable. When you refuse to lose yourself, she doesn't feel abandoned. She feels drawn. She senses that being with you means joining a strong, purposeful journey, not becoming the center of a fragile universe. Here's the truth most men never hear. Women are not attracted to men who are perfect. They are attracted to men who are grounded, self-respecting, and emotionally stable. Refusal, when done with calm confidence, signals strength. Strength creates safety. Safety creates attraction. And this isn't about manipulation. It's about becoming the version of yourself who doesn't need to chase, perform, or beg. When you refuse these four things, you stop being one of many men seeking approval and start being a man who is simply experienced as different. At the end of this video, I want you to reflect on this personal equation. Attraction equals sign. Self-respect texts. Emotional stability, neediness. Comment your answer. Which part of this equation do you struggle with the most? Like, subscribe, and share this video with a friend who needs to hear this today. Let's go deeper. Because attraction isn't just about what you don't do. It's about how refusing creates an unseen tension that pulls her in almost unconsciously. Most men think being liked is enough. They don't realize that being wanted requires restraint. And restraint, when done with intelligence, triggers a psychological mechanism women rarely even notice until they feel it. Think about it. From the first conversation, a man who's too available, too eager to agree, too quick to adjust sets a pattern of predictability. She feels comfortable, yes, but comfort doesn't spark obsession. Desire does. Desire thrives on the subtle push and pull. The invisible line that says, "This man is fully himself, and I'm not in control of him." The first silent tension comes from refusing to give constant attention. You see, in today's world, men are trained to chase likes, replies, dates, validation. And when a man suddenly refuses to chase, when he answers with calm timing, when he doesn't bend over backward to prove he cares, it creates a psychological ripple. It sparks curiosity. Why isn't he like the others? She wonders. And curiosity is the seed of attraction. Refusal also communicates standards without saying a word. Women pick up on boundaries like radar. When you refuse to tolerate disrespect, when you refuse to over-explain your choices, when you refuse to compromise your core values just to be liked, you broadcast strength silently. It's the kind of strength that doesn't need to shout, that doesn't need to perform, and women instinctively recognize it. Here's the next layer most men miss. Refusal enhances emotional contrast. Contrast is what makes your presence unforgettable. A man who constantly agrees, constantly comforts, constantly provides, is emotionally flat. There's no tension, no spark. But a man who refuses, who stands firm, who preserves his autonomy, creates highs and lows in her emotional perception. One moment she's laughing with your wit, the next she's wondering why you didn't chase her reaction. That push and pull, that's chemical, that's magnetic. Now, refusal is not about being aloof. It's not about playing childish games. It's about a quiet, grounded authority in yourself. It's saying, "I am whole. I am enough. My world does not depend on your approval." And paradoxically, when a woman senses this, she feels drawn. She doesn't feel manipulated. She feels the pull of a man who is real, who isn't bendable, who can't be taken for granted. The power of refusal extends to how you handle her emotional tests. She might challenge you, question your intentions, or subtly try to provoke jealousy. A weak man panics, over-explains, or tries to appease. A smart man refuses to react impulsively. He observes, maintains calm, and responds only when necessary. That calm response triggers respect and desire. Women are wired to value emotional stability and discernment over chaos and panic. The smartest men understand that attraction is cumulative. Each refusal, each boundary, each measured response is a brick in a foundation of magnetic tension. You are no longer just another man in her orbit. You are the man who doesn't fold, who doesn't chase validation, who doesn't lose himself in her pursuit. That rarity is what makes women feel a deeper pull than words, gifts, or attention ever could. Here's a secret most men never admit to themselves. When you refuse too much, too little, or at the wrong time, you fail. But when you refuse with precision rooted in your values and self-respect, you trigger subconscious desire. And that desire, once activated, is difficult to resist. So here's the mental exercise. Notice where you've been bending for approval. Identify the moments when you over-explained, over-chased, or over-invested emotionally. That is your starting point. Comment below. Which one do you overdo the most? Like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to understand the silent power of refusal. Now let's examine something almost nobody talks about: the invisible weight of predictability. Most men make the fatal mistake of thinking that consistency equals attraction. They send the same texts, make the same jokes, follow the same routines, and assume that reliability is enough. It's not. Predictability breeds comfort, not desire. Comfort is safe. Desire is dangerous. Desire makes her think about you when you're not there. Desire keeps her awake at night wondering what you're doing, feeling, or thinking. A smart man refuses to be predictable. He refuses to be emotionally flat. He refuses to let a woman feel like she already owns him. There's a difference between being reliable and being boring. Reliability creates respect. Mystery creates obsession. When you mix emotional stability with unpredictability, you're essentially rewriting the rules of attraction in her mind. She can't categorize you, and the human brain craves that. Women are wired to notice men who are stable yet enigmatic, grounded yet untouchable in some ways. That paradox is irresistible. Refusal plays a key role here. You refuse to be a man she can fully control. You refuse to perform for her validation. You refuse to overshare your thoughts and emotions before she has earned access. By doing this, you create a hierarchy in the interaction that works in your favor. She senses the space between you as tension, and tension is the lifeblood of attraction. Next, consider the concept of scarcity. Not in the manipulative sense, but in a true psychological sense. A man who is always available, always agreeing, always accommodating, communicates abundance of availability. That sounds good logically, but emotionally, it's deadly. She subconsciously assumes there is no cost to ignoring him because he exists in surplus. A smart man refuses this trap. He cultivates scarcity through his time, attention, and emotional energy. He is not cruel. He is not manipulative. He is fully invested in himself, which paradoxically makes her invest in him. Now, let's get sharper. Refusal amplifies value. When you refuse to overinvest, to chase, or to tolerate disrespect, you elevate yourself in her subconscious hierarchy. Women instinctively sense value through boundaries and self-possession. Every time you stand firm, every time you refuse a demand that compromises your identity, you are signaling, I am high value, I am not for everyone, I am rare. And rarity is one of the most powerful drivers of female desire. Here's the subtle psychological trap most men fall into. They confuse fear of loss with neediness. You might think if I refuse her requests or stop chasing, she will leave. That fear is normal, but the truth is the opposite. When a man operates from self-respect, refusing what diminishes him, he triggers subconscious desire. She begins to pursue him without realizing why. She feels compelled, drawn, and intrigued because he is a man who does not bend for everyone, only for those who align with his world. Refusal also sharpens communication. When you are selective in your words, actions, and emotional availability, every interaction carries weight. Your words resonate because they are not empty. Your presence becomes an experience, not a convenience. You stop being just another man and start being the man she can't ignore. Finally, recognize this. Refusal is not about rejection. It is about alignment. You refuse what lowers your standard and invest only where respect, value, and reciprocity exist. Attraction is a side effect of this alignment. Women feel it subconsciously. It bypasses logic. It bypasses conscious effort. And it becomes a magnetic force that pulls her closer, not through manipulation, but through authentic self-possession. Here's your reflection for today. Identify one area where you've been too predictable or too available. How can you refuse that habit without losing integrity? Comment your insight below, like, subscribe, and share this video with a friend who needs to understand the magnetic power of refusal. Let's talk about desire on a level most men never understand: emotional contrast and subconscious tension. Women don't just respond to words or gifts. They respond to the energy you carry. They feel it in your presence, your pace, your refusal to bend to every whim or expectation. Emotional contrast. The push and pull between availability and restraint is what keeps her thinking about you long after you've left the room. And refusal is the engine behind it. Think about it. If you're constantly agreeing, constantly available, constantly validating her emotions, She experiences comfort. She feels safe. But safety alone never fuels obsession. Obsession requires tension. The kind of tension that makes her mind circle back to you, wondering what you're thinking, feeling, or doing. A smart man generates this tension naturally without games, without manipulation, simply by refusing what diminishes his sense of self. One of the most powerful forms of refusal is refusing to be emotionally needy. Emotional neediness is subtle, yet lethal. It shows up as overexting, over-explaining, chasing validation, or seeking reassurance. Even men who consider themselves confident fall into this trap because desire is intoxicating and rejection is painful. A smart man refuses to let neediness dictate his actions. He maintains calm, measured responses, creating a psychological contrast that triggers her instinctive desire. Refusal also manifests in refusing to tolerate disrespect. Disrespect can be direct or subtle, dismissive comments, testing boundaries, or passive-aggressive behavior. Most men either ignore it or retaliate emotionally. A smart man refuses both extremes. He sets clear boundaries calmly and confidently. He communicates that his values and emotional stability are non-negotiable. And here's the key. She feels that integrity subconsciously. She senses that this man cannot be easily broken or owned, and that perception creates deep magnetic attraction. Another layer is refusing to abandon your life for her attention. A smart man refuses to cancel plans, postpone growth, or diminish his purpose to maintain availability. This is not arrogance. It is rooted self-respect. Women are drawn to men with full, purposeful lives because it signals competence, independence, and strength. When she sees that your world doesn't revolve around her alone, it triggers curiosity and desire. She unconsciously wants to earn a place in that world rather than assume she already has it. Refusal also sharpens your communication. When a man selectively shares thoughts, feelings, or plans, his words carry weight. Every interaction matters. Every moment she spends with him leaves an imprint because it is intentional, measured, and valuable. Conversely, men who overshare or oversupply attention dilute the impact of their presence. Scarcity of emotional and cognitive energy creates depth, and depth is irresistible. Here's the psychological truth few men grasp. Attraction is fueled more by what you withhold than by what you give. Women notice the man who doesn't give everything away too soon, who maintains his dignity, who protects his energy, and who refuses to bend for fleeting approval. This selective refusal triggers intrigue, curiosity, and subconscious desire, all of which cement long-term attraction far more than charm, gifts, or flattery ever could. Now, reflect on this. Where have you been giving too much too soon? Which areas of emotional, mental, or behavioral investment have you allowed to lower your value? Comment below your insight, like, subscribe, and share this video with a friend who needs to understand the hidden power of refusal in attraction. Now let's pull it all together because this is where understanding becomes transformation. Most men think attraction is something they do for her. They believe if they are charming, attentive, or impressive enough, desire will follow. But the truth is darker, deeper, and far more empowering. Attraction is something you become through refusal, boundaries, and self-possession. A smart man refuses the illusion that he must earn love by bending, explaining, or performing. He refuses to dilute himself to fit someone else's expectations. Every refusal, when rooted in authenticity, becomes magnetic. Every boundary maintained becomes a silent declaration. I am a man with standards. I am not owned. I am not disposable. Women sense this instinctively. It bypasses conscious thought. It bypasses logic. And it taps into a primal need for security, respect, and challenge all at once. Think about the 4 refusals we discussed. Refusing over-explanation. Refusing emotional overinvestment too early. refusing disrespect, and refusing to lose yourself in pursuit. Each one alone has power, but together they form an invisible armor of desirability. You are no longer just a man she meets. You are the man she experiences as rare, grounded, and untouchable in ways she can't rationalize. That is the psychology of deep, lasting attraction. The emotional pull comes not from manipulation nor from trickery. It comes from alignment. A man who refuses what diminishes him and honors what elevates him creates a life that is magnetic by design. Women don't chase chaos, they chase stability, wrapped in strength, wrapped in mystery, wrapped in the calm certainty of a man who will not collapse under pressure. When she senses this, she begins to invest emotionally without even realizing it. Desire becomes inevitable. Refusal also teaches another truth. The man who is fully himself does not fear loss. He understands that love is not possession. Desire is not compliance. She can choose, she can hesitate, she can test, but she cannot manufacture the authenticity, the grounded confidence, or the emotional stability he embodies. That's power. And power is not loud. It is quiet, deliberate, and magnetic. Here's the final insight. Most men never grasp. Attraction is a mirror. You cannot reflect what you do not possess. If you chase, over-explain, or compromise your values, you reflect insecurity. If you maintain boundaries, refuse what diminishes you, and preserve your emotional and mental sovereignty, you reflect strength, value, and presence. And that reflection becomes irresistible. Now take a moment. Reflect on your life, your habits, your behaviors. Which of these 4 refusals do you struggle with the most? Which area is sabotaging your magnetism without you even realizing it? This is not about perfection. It's about awareness, practice, and transformation. Every refusal you make with integrity strengthens your pull, your identity, and your presence in ways that words or actions alone cannot achieve. Here's your personal equation to commit to memory. Attraction equals sign. Self-respect text, emotional stability. Eve neediness. Write it down. Live it. Measure yourself against it honestly. Comment your answer below. Which variable in this equation do you need to improve first? Like, subscribe, and share this video with a friend who needs to hear this truth today. Because the men who understand this will never chase. They will attract, and that changes.